Hello, for Driving Change, this is Matthew Bishop, and today I'm talking with Ndidi Nwuneli, who is a great African leader in entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, and in particular is currently focusing on the issue of hunger and how to eradicate it. Ndidi, welcome. I'd like to start by asking, you've got this gathering we're speaking on the eve of, to mark the 10th anniversary of Sahel. What are you hoping will come out of that meeting?
Thank you so much, Matthew. It's great to connect with you. So we're focusing on zero hunger. We have 10 years to achieve SDG 2, and it's really a race to try to meet this zero hunger agenda. Now, when you look at the world, during the 2020 year, we have actually seen almost a doubling of food insecurity around the world. And instead of getting better, our indices are getting worse, not only around malnutrition, but obesity and all the related diseases. And so we want to focus on the role of private sector as the engine of growth and change. We believe private sector has to take a lead in innovation, catalytic financing, and supporting zero hunger, addressing zero hunger, leveraging innovation and technology. So we've convened about 20 amazing speakers, keynote speakers like Dr. Rajiv Shah of the Rockefeller Foundation, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, who is the UN Special Envoy on the Food System Summit, Lawrence Haddad, who is the ED of GAIN, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and last but definitely not least, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who is the President of the African Development Bank. So we're looking forward to a very exciting and engaging summit, and we have over 2,000 people registered. So it's going to be really interesting to see how private sector actors across Africa and across the world can collaborate to address this zero hunger.
So you're in Lagos. I guess the outside world has often looked at Africa both as a source of food, but also as a place that's been beset by a very inefficient, sometimes catastrophically so, sort of food ecosystem. Give us a sense, you bring a global perspective. Give us a sense of how Africa, is catching up or could catch up with the rest of the world in terms of its food system, and particularly through that lens of ending hunger.
So Africa is naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. There's no reason why we're net importers of food or why 1 out of every 3 African children is stunted. And like you said, Matthew, it's really hinged on poor policies, fragmented ecosystems, histories of focus on primary production instead of processing, and a really disjointed ecosystem that is plagued with challenges around infrastructure, access to water, energy, feeder roads, which make our value chains very uncompetitive. Now, what technology and innovation allow us to do is to leapfrog. And as you know, Africa has embraced cell phone use and digital ag in ways that other regions have not. Over 600 million Africans will have access to a cell phone by the end of this 2025. And we can leverage cell phones not only to get access to data for weather patterns, or access to markets, but also to train our farmers and provide extension support. So I think what we're seeing is an opportunity to leapfrog and an opportunity for Africa to demonstrate how to do it the right way. I think the rest of the world went through a very unhealthy pattern of agriculture, which contributed to the climate change crisis we currently face. There's a unique opportunity for African farmers, Africa's private sector, and policymakers to collaborate to ensure that we can learn from the mistakes of other regions and embrace technology and innovation and collaborate across food ecosystems to build back better, but also to leapfrog. And I spent the last year, as you know, writing a book called Food Entrepreneurs in Africa, Building Resilient Agriculture Businesses, and learning from those entrepreneurs who have scaled on this continent. I really believe that we can address the food insecurities that currently face us, but we can also ensure that we can feed ourselves and feed the world. And where I am is that I believe that in the next 10 years, we can transform this food ecosystem, working in our countries, working in our regions, and then collaborating globally to take on key aspects of our food ecosystem challenges and address them collaboratively.
So what would be the 2 or 3 highest priorities for things that need to be changed in order to make that possible?
I think there are 2 key interventions required. The first is that we need investment in catalytic financing, and we need a whole range of options when it comes to patient capital that comes in at every point of the value chain to address the huge ecosystem challenges, bottlenecks across the entire ecosystem. We need to mobilize that capital locally and domestically from our pension funds on the continent, from our private sector investors, from our philanthropists, but we also need to galvanize funding from the rest of the world. And I really believe that you can make money on the African continent in the food ecosystem. I mean, Matthew, we have currently 1.2 billion people. By 2050, will be 2.4 billion people. Everybody needs to eat 3 times a day. And we can unlock the potential in this sector through the introduction of catalytic and appropriate financing. We can also de-risk investment in agriculture and food by partnering with insurance providers, partnering with public sector officials who can provide that de-risking capital as well. The second is policies. We need an enabling policy environment. We need an ecosystem approach when it comes to policy. We need to stop working in silos, and we need to design ecosystems that work. And when I think about these ecosystems and the actors required to build back better and to streamline policies, it's actors in the food and agriculture landscape, actors in the health and nutrition landscape, gender, climate, financing, innovation and technology, infrastructure. And each of our countries at the local, state, federal, and regional levels need to have these actors sit together to plan for the future.
And just for those that aren't aware of the notion of catalytic capital, I mean, how is that different from sort of traditional aid or traditional investment in Africa?
So when we say catalytic financing, so there are a broad range of financing options available. But when you come with catalytic financing, it's patient, it's tailor-made to the particular investment opportunity, and it doesn't just look at financial returns. It looks like social returns. It looks like a holistic perspective. And it picks investment opportunities that can serve as triggers for other actors in the ecosystem. So I'll give you an example. Our sister company, Sahel Capital, I believe manages a fund called the Fund for Agriculture Financing in Nigeria, which is a catalytic fund. So we look for, in each value chain, we look for SMEs that will not only source, backward integrate, because they're working with farmers in their entire value chain, but they're also affecting the industry because of the position they play in that industry. So by investing in them through private equity, putting in capital, you're not only strengthening their capacity as an organization, you're strengthening their governance, you're strengthening their whole production and operations, but you're ensuring that they really galvanize the entire ecosystem and they serve as an example, but also a trigger for growth and advancement in the sector. That investment is also patient. It's 5 to 7 years. It's not a 1-year working capital investment. It's not a 2-year loan. You know what I mean? And you're working as a partner with the leaders in this sector to really transform their company, but also transform the sector.
You mentioned the book that you've been working on. Do you want to give us just one inspiring example that would give people a sense of what is now possible in Africa in terms of entrepreneurship?
There's so many examples, so many. But if I had to pick just one, I would say that there's a company in Kenya called Twiga. And Twiga actually started off as a company that was going to be exporting bananas to the Middle East, and quickly realized that they needed to set standards for the fruit industry in Kenya to be able to meet international demand. And what they then did was basically say, how can we leverage technology to connect our farmers to small retailers in the city of Nairobi? So they basically said, we have cell phones. We're going to connect farmers directly. So they built a whole supply chain of farmers, help the farmers meet their standards. And then within 14 hours, a small retailer can order fresh fruit, and they'll be delivered to the small retailer. Now they're serving 14,000 retailers. They're working with hundreds and hundreds of farmers, and they've raised like $60 million, and they're expanding rapidly. But what they've done is not only improve the lives of the farmers who are now earning more money because you've cut out all the different actors in the value chain, but they're ensuring that the retailers have access to fresh produce. They don't have to go to the market to get it. And the customer eventually has, fresher fruit and a healthier lifestyle. So the entire chain is more efficient, more transparent. They're getting lots of data, and they're enabling the leapfrogging that we talked about. And imagine during this COVID-19 era, where we're all forced to embrace technology in ways that we never did before. This company was already ahead of the curve. And that's just one example. But there's so many examples of companies, from seed systems to commercializing great research to improving nutritious food. And I'm so inspired by these entrepreneurs who are the cutting edge of what is possible and demonstrate and inspire us to see what is possible in our own ecosystem.
And of course, you've been working on an entrepreneurial project of your own, Nourish Africa, which I was lucky enough to be there when you were doing some of your early thinking on that. But tell us a bit about how that's going.
So we started Nourishing Africa because we felt, this is a $1 trillion industry in Africa, and entrepreneurs should be growing their businesses and scaling their businesses, but many of them lack access to data, access to financing, capacity support, networks. And in each of the countries, we found entrepreneurs who were working in this ecosystem but were isolated. So what Nourishing Africa is a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs who are going to transform the African agricultural landscape. So we're providing all the support, the data, the knowledge, the capacity support they require. And our vision is 1 million entrepreneurs. So I tell people it's Facebook, LinkedIn, and DevEx all wrapped together for African entrepreneurs in the food and agricultural landscape. And it was born under Matthew's guidance and leadership. And what we're so excited about is that it's taken on a life of its own. I mean, I meet people who say, I'm part of Nourishing Africa. I've benefited from Nourishing Africa. Right now, we have over 650 active entrepreneurs and agribusinesses on the platform. We've been able to connect them to funding and networks and amplify their voices and change their narratives. And we're gradually growing. We have entrepreneurs from 34 countries, which is just so exciting, and partners across the board. And it just shows you what ecosystem solutions can do. And when you gather people together, you amplify their voice. They can shape policy, they can learn, they can grow, and they can trade with each other and network with each other to create more wealth, but also more solutions to solve problems that affect them and affect others in their communities.
So 2 more questions before we wrap up. One really is about the COVID crisis, which we referred to several times, and you spoke about earlier how it's made things much worse. I mean, how is Africa coming through this crisis? What are your hopes, fears as we head into 21?
Well, what is amazing, Matthew, is that a lot of people expected Africa to really be hit by this health crisis. And in the beginning, there was a lot of fear. But Africa has not been hit by the health crisis, the magnitude as the West has. But what we have been hit by is an economic crisis, which has set some of our countries 30 years behind. Nigeria is experiencing a recession, and I don't think we've had one as this deep in about 20 years. And many other countries are facing that. In fact, negative GDP growth rates. And so from that perspective, there's an economic crisis, and there's a sense of urgency for all of us to figure out how to work collaboratively to grow the economy, to create jobs. And we've been hit by declines in remittances. As you know, many of the African diaspora who used to send money home are all affected by COVID, the job losses in country. And so you see statistics like 57% of household income spent on food, where we've experienced an inflation rate of 17% in the last 4 months. That means that the average family cannot have access to nutritious food, and definitely can enjoy 3 meals a day. So what does that mean for us? It means that as actors in the ecosystem, we have to not only push for innovation and technology, but we have to lead the way on what is possible. And I've spent the last few months as the coordinator of the visioning exercise for Nigeria, Vision 2021 to 26, 26 to 30, and 2050. And this has been an exciting opportunity to say, how can we build back better? And agriculture will serve as a great, great opportunity for building back better. Because as I mentioned, we're naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. So it's going to take bold action, decisive action, but it's also going to take leaders who can see a better future and a brighter future and a new way of doing things. And we're already doing that through this intervention and the role I'm playing with a group of 25 people appointed by the government. We're really changing the narrative and already coming up with very tangible and implementable actions at a national level and at a regional level to address these challenges.
Great. And lastly, I mean, with driving change, I mean, one of the reasons it's been created is a feeling that we desperately need more talented people to go into public policy, into public service, and to emerge as a new generation of leaders. And I know that's leadership, and in Africa has been a big passion of yours. You helped found Leap Africa nearly 20 years ago to encourage better leadership. How do you see the challenge of leadership in Africa, and how to respond? What do we need? What needs to be done to respond to that and get the leaders you need?
So I definitely share your conviction that leadership is critical for any transformation to occur. And what we've been doing at LEAP over the last 18, 19 years is really creating the next generation of principled, dynamic, credible leaders in Africa. And I believe LEAP itself stands for leadership, effectiveness, accountability, and professionalism. And Africa desperately needs these 4 attributes, but so does the rest of the world. And one of the things we do at LEAP is we start by changing mindsets. And Matthew, we need to change mindsets all over the world right now because the concept of leadership is being distorted. So we teach that a leader is an individual who has a vision for positive change and galvanizes others to effect that vision, to impact the lives of people. And that definition sounds so true to me till this day. When I started LEAP and to this day, the concept of integrity, that character has currency, and the authenticity is critical to effective leadership is required. And that mindset shift is where we start. And what we teach young people and what we teach entrepreneurs is that leadership is an act, not a position. It's what you do that defines your leadership, not the positions you have. And we distinguish between leaders and rulers. And there is a difference right now in the world, in Africa and across the world. And we cannot confuse the two. There's a leader, there's a ruler. And just because you have a title does not make you a leader. And so what we try to do with our programs is help our young people actually start initiatives to effect positive change in society. And through these initiatives, they build their leadership muscles. And they've started social change projects in their communities, in their countries. And I'm proud to say that many of our alums are leading today in the public and private sector. And they have tangible impact on the lives of people. Now we work in 6 African countries. And that's what gives me hope, is that you can start with a group of people. And what we're creating is an army of change agents. And we need enough people who believe this, who live it, and who can effect change one person at a time, one community at a time. I think there's a quote from JFK, which I used to post on our walls when we started LEAP in 2002. And it talks about a pebble that creates a ripple, which creates a wave, which can pull down the mightiest wall of oppression. I'm still an optimist that we can create those waves of social change in our communities, in the health sector, in the food sector, in the governance sector, across the board, creating those waves that will push down some of the mightiest walls of oppression that we continue to face. And that's what gives me hope. That's what gets me excited every day as I embark on fighting some of the causes that I've taken on in my lifetime.
Well, on that fantastically optimistic note, this sounds like the perfect place to end. So I'd love to thank you, Ndidi Nwuneli, for talking with Driving Change, and good luck with your meeting and tomorrow. And I hope that out of this gathering will come the kind of reforms that will make Africa the leader in world agriculture that it really deserves to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you.